Ambassador's four eyes dilated with terror as she watched the tactical display. The crimson dots representing the invasion fleet had doubled in the last solar cycle, their bioships spreading across the outer rim of the Galactic Confederation like a plague. Each vessel pulsed with malevolent life, grown rather than built, hungry for the soft flesh of civilized worlds. The emergency council chamber aboard Station Harmony buzzed with panicked chittering, melodic wails, and the electromagnetic bursts that served as the primary languages of the assembled species. Representatives from 47 member worlds had gathered in desperate consultation, their normally pristine diplomatic protocols crumbling under the weight of imminent extinction. "They have consumed the system," announced Director, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's soft blue illumination. 7 billion souls gone. Their bioships grow stronger with each world they devour. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. They had been peaceful traders, their garden worlds renowned throughout the galaxy for their poetry and philosophical wisdom. Now they existed only in the bellies of living starships. "Our combined fleets cannot stop them," admitted Admiral, her serpentine hood flaring in distress. "The vessels heal faster than we can damage them. They adapt to our weapons within hours. We need a miracle." "Or monsters," whispered. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of the station's life support system seemed to pause at her words. "What did you say?" Director's voice carried a note of electronic static. Slender form trembled as all attention focused on her. As the Confederation's chief, she had spent decades studying the most dangerous species in known space. Her research had taken her to worlds where the very air could kill, where predators evolved specifically to hunt thinking beings, where survival required constant vigilance and ruthless efficiency. "The humans," she said, her voice barely audible above the station's ambient noise. "We could contact the humans." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Half the assembly erupted in horrified protests while the other half demanded clarification. Admiral's hood snapped fully erect, her scales shifting to a deep purple of alarm. "The species, they're classified as a galactic hazard. The quarantine protocol exists for good reason." "I know," replied, accessing her personal with shaking appendages. "But consider our alternatives. They will reach the core worlds in 6 cycles. Our evacuation ships can't move entire populations fast enough. We're facing extinction." She projected her research files into the chamber's central display. Images of Sol 3, the third planet from an unremarkable yellow star, filled the space above them. The world looked deceptively beautiful from orbit, with swirling white clouds, blue oceans, and green-brown landmasses. Nothing in its appearance suggested the horror that had evolved there. "Earth is classified as a Class 12, began, her academic training helping her find calm and familiar facts. "Gravity 1.7 times galactic standard, atmospheric pressure that would crush most life forms, temperature variations that swing from lethal cold to killing heat. The planet's rotation creates weather systems that regularly devastate entire continents." She brought up biological surveys, and several representatives recoiled from their seats. The creatures displayed rational explanation. Massive predators with jaws that could shear through starship hull plating. Microscopic organisms that could dissolve living tissue in seconds. Plant life that actively hunted and consumed animal matter. "But it's the apex predator we need to understand," continued. "Homo, the species that not only survived this nightmare world but conquered it completely." A new set of images appeared. Tall bipedal creatures with forward-facing eyes and exposed skin. They looked almost fragile compared to the armored, scaled, or crystalline forms of the assembled council members. Several representatives chittered in what might have been amusement. "They appear rather soft," observed Counselor, adjusting his position on his field. "That's what we thought initially," replied grimly. "When our first survey probe reached Sol 3, we classified them as a pre-species of herbivorous gatherers. We were catastrophically wrong." She activated a video file marked with multiple warning tags. The recording showed humans in what appeared to be recreational combat. They struck each other with their bare appendages, drawing bodily fluids, while others of their species watched and produced sounds of approval. "They fight for entertainment," explained. "These displays of violence are considered leisure activities." The footage switched to different scenes. Humans hurling themselves from great heights with only fabric wings. Humans diving into the crushing depths of their oceans without breathing apparatus. Humans climbing vertical cliff faces using only their natural grip strength. They actively seek dangerous situations. Pain and risk stimulate their neural chemistry, producing what they call adrenaline. Pause the playback on an image of a human female pursuing one of Earth's massive predators on foot. This individual is engaged in what they term jogging while being stalked by a creature capable of crushing her skull in its jaws. She is experiencing what they call fun. The chamber had grown completely silent. Even the translation devices seemed to struggle with the concept. But surely, Director managed, these are aberrant individuals. Their general population must be more reasonable. Brought up historical records. This is footage from what they call the World Wars. Conflicts where they turned their entire planet into a battlefield. Over 100 million of their kind died in these conflicts. This represents approximately 1% of their total population at the time. The tactical displays showed the scale of human warfare, weapons that could level entire cities. Campaigns fought across frozen wastelands and burning deserts, soldiers advancing through fields of poison gas and explosive charges. They developed weapons capable of ending all life on their planet, continued. Not accidentally, but deliberately. They called them nuclear weapons and built enough to destroy Earth dozens of times over. When they realized the danger, they didn't eliminate these weapons. They simply agreed not to use them. The weapons still exist. Admiral made a strangled sound. They kept planet-killer weapons. Why? Because other humans also had them. Their psychology appears to be built around escalation and deterrence. They survive by convincing their enemies that they're more dangerous than any possible threat. Brought up the most disturbing files. But none of this explains why they're truly terrifying. The real horror of humans isn't their violence or their technology. It's their compassion. Confused chittering filled the chamber. "I don't understand," admitted Counselor. "Watch this," said, activating a new video feed. The recording showed a human settlement under attack by one of Earth's super predators, a massive creature with crushing jaws and armored hide. A small human had become separated from the group and was cornered by the beast. Instead of fleeing or sacrificing the individual for the greater good, as any rational species would do, every adult human in the vicinity immediately charged toward the predator. "They will sacrifice themselves for individuals they've never met," explained. "This isn't rare behavior. Their entire social structure is built around protecting the weak, healing the sick, and rescuing anyone in danger, regardless of cost." She switched to another file. During one of their global conflicts, human soldiers abandoned tactically valuable positions to rescue civilians from enemy-controlled territory. They call this doing what's right. The final video showed humans in environmental suits working in the void of space. They were dismantling what appeared to be weapons platforms. After achieving, they dismantled their orbital defense systems. When we asked why, they said they were too dangerous and might hurt innocent people. They voluntarily disarmed themselves before first contact. Director's crystalline form flickered. "That makes no sense from an evolutionary perspective." "Nothing about humans makes evolutionary sense," replied. "They're persistence hunters who never give up on a target. They form emotional bonds with potential food sources and enemy species. They create art while their worlds burn and tell stories while facing extinction. They're the only species we've encountered that actively tries to improve the lives of other species without expecting anything in return." She paused, letting the implications sink in. The quarantine protocol exists because humans don't just survive there. They transform it into something that protects and nurtures life. Every survey of Sol 3 shows their population of other species increasing. They've domesticated predators into companions. They've turned their entire planet into a garden. Admiral's scales had shifted to a pale yellow of deep thought. "You're suggesting we invite them to help us fight the—" "I'm suggesting we invite them to save us," corrected. "The question is whether we can survive being saved by humans." The chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives argued that humans would be impossible to control, that inviting into Confederation space would create a second crisis. Others pointed out that extinction was already guaranteed if they did nothing. Director called for order with a sharp electromagnetic pulse. "The mathematics are simple. We face certain death from the humans represent an unknown variable. Unknown is better than zero." But how would we even contact them? Asked Counselor. The Sol system is under strict quarantine. Our ships aren't even permitted in that sector. Hesitated before answering. I may have already established communication protocols. The stunned silence that followed was broken only by the soft whisper of air circulation systems. You what? Admiral's voice carried a dangerous edge. My research required direct observation, explained quickly. I've been monitoring their information networks for 7 standard years. I've learned their languages and cultural patterns. They're aware of our existence. The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives demanded her immediate arrest, while others called for emergency evacuation procedures. Director Swarm blazed with agitated light patterns. You've contaminated a quarantine species. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've given us a chance, replied, her voice steady despite her terror. The humans have been expecting contact. They've been preparing for it. They call it First Contact Protocols. They have entire governmental departments dedicated to peaceful interaction with alien species. Peaceful? Admiral leaned forward. You just finished explaining how violent they are. They're violent when threatened, clarified. But they're also the only species that actively seeks peaceful solutions to conflict. They have a saying, violence is the last resort of reasonable beings. She brought up linguistic analysis files. I've been learning their languages. Did you know they have over 7,000 distinct language groups? Most species develop 1, perhaps 2 languages. Humans created thousands because they value different perspectives and ways of thinking. What did you tell them about us? Director demanded. The truth, that we're a peaceful confederation of species dedicated to mutual cooperation and protection. That we face extinction from a hostile force we cannot defeat alone. That we need help. And their response activated her personal communicator. A holographic display showed a message written in angular human script, with translation protocols running beneath it. We are honored that you would trust us with your survival, she read aloud. Humanity stands ready to assist our galactic neighbors. We have been hopping for this day since we first looked up at the stars. Tell us where you need us and we will be there. The chamber fell silent again as the implications registered. They're eager to help us. Counselor's voice carried confusion. Enthusiastic, confirmed. They've spent their entire civilization dreaming about meeting other species. They see this as the greatest opportunity in their history. Admiral reviewed the tactical displays showing positions. How long would it take them to reach our outer territories? Their fastest ships could arrive in 12 standard cycles, replied. But they're asking for detailed information about capabilities. They want to understand the threat before engaging. They want intelligence data. Why? Smiled for the first time since the emergency session began. Because humans don't fight to win. They fight to ensure their enemies can never threaten anyone else ever again. They're not asking how to defeat they're asking how to save the galaxy. Director's form pulsed with indecision. The risks are enormous if we're wrong about human intentions. Then we die as slaves instead of warriors, Admiral interrupted. I've seen the feeding protocols. Death in battle is preferable to what they do to captured populations. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 24 species voted to maintain the quarantine and face extinction with dignity. 23 voted to contact the humans and risk whatever consequences might follow. Director cast the deciding vote. Send the message, he commanded. May whatever gods we worship have mercy on us all. Appendages trembled as she activated the deep space communication array. The message was simple, transmitted on frequencies she knew human monitoring stations would detect. This is the Galactic Confederation. We are under attack and request assistance from humanity. Coordinates and tactical data attached. Please hurry. The response came faster than should have been physically possible. Confederation vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Sarah commanding the Sol Defense Force. We are already en route. Estimated arrival, 7 standard cycles. Message ends. As the communication terminated, every representative in the chamber realized the same thing simultaneously. The humans had been prepared to leave their system before receiving the distress call. They had been waiting for an excuse to leave their voluntary quarantine. What have we done? Whispered Director. Looked at the tactical display. where new contacts were already appearing at the edge of sensor range. Ships unlike anything in Confederation databases, moving at speeds that current understanding of physics. "We've invited them to save us," she replied. "Now we find out if we can survive being rescued." The chamber's lights dimmed automatically as the station's sensors strained to track the approaching human fleet. In the darkness, 47 species contemplated the possibility that they had just solved one existential threat by creating another. Outside the viewports, stars began shifting positions as human vessels bent spacetime around them, racing toward a war zone where the fate of galactic civilization hung in the balance. The age of human quarantine was ending. The age of human intervention was about to begin. Captain's breathing apparatus wheezed as he struggled to maintain consciousness aboard his crippled command ship. The biovessel that had torn through his hull leaked acidic fluids that ate through everything they touched. Emergency lighting cast twisted shadows across the bridge, where half his crew lay motionless in spreading pools of their own bodily fluids. The tactical display flickered between damaged and functional, showing the systematic annihilation of the Third Fleet. 47 ships had responded to the distress call from the mining colony on 4. Now only 12 remained combat-capable, and those were falling back in desperate retreat. "Captain," wheezed his communications officer, her scales burned black from exposure to bioweapons. "We're receiving a transmission, unknown origin." Forced himself upright in his command chair. "No, sir, the signal is clean, no biological encoding, it's artificial." Through the bridge's main viewport, could see the feeding ship latched onto the colony's primary habitat dome. Living tendrils penetrated the structure's hull, and the screams of 12 million colonists echoed through his ship's damaged communications array. The bioship pulsed with obscene satisfaction as it consumed everything inside. "Put it through," he commanded. The voice that emerged from the speakers was unlike anything in Confederation databases. Crisp, efficient, and carrying an undertone that made survival instincts scream warnings he didn't understand. "Confederation vessel, this is Captain Reeves commanding the Earthship Indomitable. We are moving to assist. Please clear the combat zone." Looked at his tactical display in confusion. "Communications, I show no vessels in sensor range except bioships." "Confirmed, sir. No artificial signatures detected." He opened a return channel. "Unknown vessel Indomitable, this is Captain of the CNS Resolution. I show no ships in the area. What is your position?" "Directly above you, Captain. We've been observing for the last 6 minutes." His blood turned to ice. The Resolution's sensors were military-grade, capable of detecting a child's toy at 50,000 kilometers. Nothing could hide from them at close range. "That's impossible." Human technology often appears impossible to outside observers. "Captain, you need to move your remaining ships to minimum safe distance immediately." "Why?" "Because we're about to demonstrate why my species was quarantined." The transmission ended, stared at his displays, trying to process what he'd heard. Humans, the mythical from the sealed Sol system, part of him wanted to believe it was a hallucination brought on by bioweapon exposure. Then his sensors registered something that shouldn't exist. Space itself was bending. Reality twisted in impossible ways as massive shapes materialized from nothing. Not ships emerging from faster-than-light travel, but vessels that had been hidden in dimensional folds that Confederation science insisted were theoretical impossibilities. The first human ship to fully manifest was elegant in the way a sword blade was elegant. Clean lines, no visible weapons, no decorative elements. It simply existed with perfect, terrifying efficiency. As more ships appeared, realized the human fleet had been surrounding the battle for who knows how long. "Sir," his sensor operator gasped, "I'm reading 27 vessels. They're enormous." The largest human ship stretched nearly 4 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull made from materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Smaller vessels darted around it like hunting pack predators, their movements more fluid than any artificial construct should be able to manage. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "the humans are hailing us again." Captain Reeves's voice filled the bridge. "Captain, our medical teams are standing by to assist your wounded. However, I need your ships to withdraw to safe range before we engage the human weapons tend to have rather expansive effect radii." looked at the feeding ship still attached to the colony. Captain Reeves, there are 12 million civilians in that habitat. Any weapons fire risks killing them all. Understood, we've accounted for that in our tactical planning. Something in the human's voice made survival instincts scream. What do you mean, accounted for? We're going to save them, Captain. That's what we do. The human fleet moved with coordination, that physics. Ships that massive shouldn't be able to maneuver like fighter craft, but they flowed around each other in perfect formation. As they approached the feeding ship, noticed they weren't targeting the bio-vessel. They were targeting the space around it. What are they doing? He asked no one in particular. His sensor operator looked up from her displays with an expression of pure terror. Sir, they're not deploying weapons, they're deploying some kind of containment field. They're building a cage around the entire colony. Energy patterns unlike anything in Confederation databases surrounded the habitat dome and the ship. The bio-vessel tried to disengage, its living hull rippling with alarm responses. The massive creature began pulling its feeding tendrils from the colony's hull, but found itself unable to move. Captain, Reeves's voice returned. We're going to need your assistance with evacuation procedures. Our transporters can move your people to safety, but we need someone familiar with Confederation physiology to coordinate medical treatment. Transporters. Matter-energy conversion systems. We can move your people directly from the habitat to our medical bays. The engineer looked up from her damage control station. Captain, that's impossible. Matter conversion requires massive energy expenditures. The power requirements alone would need a stellar-class reactor. On the main display, the human ships began to glow with barely contained energy. The space around them shimmered with heat distortions as their power systems came online. By the void, whispered the sensor operator. Sir, I'm reading energy signatures equivalent to a main sequence star. Each ship is generating stellar-level output. That's not possible, the engineer protested. No material can contain that kind of energy. They watched in stunned silence as columns of light began materializing aboard their ship. The light resolved into humanoid figures wearing what appeared to be environmental suits. The beings were tall, taller than any Confederation species, with broad shoulders and long limbs. Their faces were hidden behind transparent barriers, but their movements radiated confidence and purpose. One of them approached Captain's command chair. When it spoke, the voice was filtered through mechanical systems but carried the same efficiency as Captain Reeves. Captain, I'm Commander Sarah, Earth Medical Corps. We need to get your wounded to proper treatment facilities immediately. Looked at his dying crew members. The bioweapons were beyond Confederation medical technology. Our doctors can't treat exposure to their toxins. Ours can. Human medicine is quite advanced. We've had to become very good at treating trauma and toxin exposure. More humans materialized throughout the ship. They moved with practiced efficiency, deploying equipment that hummed with contained power. Within minutes, they had stabilized crew members that had already written off as lost. How is this possible? He asked. Commander looked up from a medical scanner that was somehow repairing his communications officer's acid burns in real time. Necessity, Captain. When your home world actively tries to kill you every single day, you get very good at keeping people alive under impossible circumstances. Through the main viewport, the evacuation was all ready. Streams of light were moving between the habitat dome and the human ships as millions of colonists were transported to safety. The feeding ship writhed in its energy cage, its bioweapons having no effect on the containment field. Captain Reeves called over the communications system. Evacuation is 90% complete. We'll have everyone out in 30 minutes. What happens to the ship? We're going to have a conversation with it. Something about the way the human said, conversation, made Scales ripple with instinctive fear. The last transport beam faded as the final civilians were evacuated. The habitat dome stood empty, its structure intact despite the feeding attempt. The bioship remained trapped in the human containment field, its living hull pulsing with frustrated aggression. All civilian personnel are secure, Reeves announced. Beginning communication attempt. Communication? Couldn't believe what he was hearing. Captain, they don't communicate, they consume. They're biological weapons designed for one purpose. Every intelligent species can be reasoned with, Captain. The key is finding the right incentive structure. On the tactical display, the human ships moved into a perfect sphere around the trapped vessel. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement as their weapons systems came online. Unknown bioentity, Reeves's voice carried across all frequencies. You have attempted to consume members of species under human protection. This is unacceptable behavior. Cease all aggressive actions and prepare to discuss terms. The ship's response was immediate and predictable. Bioweapons erupted from its hull, acidic projectiles, and living missiles that should have overwhelmed any defense system. Instead, they simply vanished as they touched the containment field. Aggressive behavior noted, Reeves continued with unchanged calm. Second warning, cease all hostile actions and prepare for negotiation. This is your final opportunity to resolve this matter peacefully. The bioship's attack intensified. Weapons that could melt through starship hulls discharged at maximum intensity. The human containment field didn't even flicker. Warning acknowledged and rejected, Reeves announced. Beginning educational demonstration. What happened next redefined understanding of the possible. The human weapons didn't fire. Instead, space-time itself began to collapse around the ship. Reality twisted inward as artificial gravity fields compressed the biovessel from every direction simultaneously. The living ship's screams echoed across electromagnetic spectrums, but the gravitational prison continued to contract. Stop broadcast on all frequencies. You're torturing it. Negative, Reeves replied. We're demonstrating consequences. The understands only predation and consumption. We're showing it a larger predator. The bioship's hull began to buckle under the gravitational pressure. Its weapons fell silent as all energy was diverted to structural integrity. For the first time in recorded history, a vessel was helpless. Unknown entity, Reeves called out. You are now experiencing what your prey experiences. This discomfort can continue indefinitely, or we can discuss alternative arrangements. The change in the bioship's behavior was immediate. The chaotic aggression patterns ceased, replaced by what could only be described as attention. The creature was listening. Excellent, we are going to establish communication protocols. You will learn our language. We will learn yours. You will explain why you consume intelligent species, and we will explain why this practice ends today. Captain Reeves interrupted. This is unprecedented. They have never shown capacity for communication. Everything is unprecedented until someone does it for the first time, Captain. We're going to solve this problem permanently. Over the next several hours, watched in fascination as the humans systematically established linguistic contact with the bioship. Their translation protocols were adaptive, learning the creature's communication methods in real time. Gradually, actual exchange began. What they learned changed everything. They weren't a natural species. They were weapons, created by an extinct civilization as the ultimate biological warfare system. They consumed intelligence because that was their programmed function, but the programming was incomplete. The creators had died before implementing restraint protocols. They're weapons without an off switch, Commander explained too, as human medical teams continued treating his crew. Biological machines trapped in an endless consumption cycle they can't escape. Can they be reasoned with? They can be. Human psychological warfare specialists are already working on the problem. Watch the tactical display as more human ships arrived. The fleet now numbered in the hundreds, each vessel larger and more advanced than anything in Confederation space. They moved with perfect coordination, surrounding not just this system, but establishing perimeters around every known incursion site. How many ships do you have? He asked. Commander checked a device on her wrist. Active fleet, about 12,000 vessels. Reserve fleet is considerably larger. 12,000? Voice cracked. The entire Confederation Navy fields 800 ships. Different operational philosophies, Captain. Your species builds for exploration and diplomacy. Humans build for survival. Through the viewport, he could see human engineering teams working on the habitat dome, repairing damage from the feeding attempt. Other teams were studying the bioship's hull, taking samples and scanning its internal structure. What are they doing to it? Learning, every piece of technology will be reverse-engineered, analyzed, and understood. We don't fight wars, Captain. We solve problems permanently. A new voice joined their conversation as Captain Reeves materialized on the bridge via transport beam. He was tall even for a human, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of his surroundings. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected entire civilizations. Captain, I wanted to personally thank you for the intelligence data your government provided. It's made our response much more effective. Response: the invasion ends today. All bioships will be contained and their crews offered rehabilitation or, if necessary, humane termination. The species that created them left detailed technical documentation in their genetics. We're downloading it now. Looked at his displays showing hundreds of human ships across dozens of star systems. You're engaging them everywhere simultaneously. Coordination is essential in operations of this scale. By this time tomorrow, there will either be peaceful members of galactic society or they'll no longer exist as a threat. And after that, Captain Reeves smiled and finally understood why his species had been quarantined. It wasn't because humans were dangerous to others. It was because once they decided to help, nothing could stop them. After that, Captain, we're going to have a very long conversation about how to prevent this situation from ever happening again. The galaxy is about to become a much safer place. As if to emphasize his point, the contained ship pulsed with new patterns of light. The translation system converted its signals into standard Confederation language. We understand, we choose peace. The age of terror was ending. The age of human protection had begun, and Captain realized that the galaxy would never be the same again. Ambassador stood in the observation deck of Confederation Station Prime, watching the impossible sight of Earth's first official diplomatic vessel approaching through normal space. The ship moved nothing like the warships that had ended the threat 6 months earlier. Where those had been instruments of precision violence, this vessel radiated welcome like a beacon designed to greet friends rather than destroy enemies. The human diplomatic ship Endeavour stretched 2 kilometers from bow to stern, but its design spoke of peaceful intentions. Transparent sections revealed gardens and recreational areas where humans could be seen engaging in various activities. Art installations decorated the hull's exterior, creating patterns that shifted color based on the viewing angle. It was, realized, beautiful in a way that made her chest ache with unfamiliar emotions. They're requesting permission to dock at Bay 7, announced the station's traffic controller, his crystalline form flickering with nervous energy. Activated her communicator. Permission granted, extend full diplomatic courtesies. What she didn't say was that Bay 7 had been chosen because it was the largest docking facility on the station, and they still weren't certain how much space humans actually needed. Everything about them exceeded expectations. Director materialized beside her, his form blazing with anxious light patterns. The preliminary medical reports from the human intervention zones are disturbing. Disturbing how? They're not just treating Confederation casualties. They've established full medical facilities in every system they've entered, free of charge, open to all species. He paused, processing data streams that were clearly troubling him. They're curing diseases we've struggled with for centuries. They're regenerating lost limbs. They've increased the average of every species they've treated by 30%. Nodded, having read the same reports. They told Captain Reeves that human medicine was quite advanced. Advanced? His form pulsed with disbelief. They're performing medical miracles as routine procedures. Their trauma surgeons are saving patients who suffered direct hits from bioweapons. Patients we classified as inevitably terminal are returning to active duty within days. Through the observation port, they watched the human ship complete its docking procedures. The mechanical systems interfaced seamlessly with Confederation technology, despite the ships being built by completely different industrial philosophies. There's more, continued. Intelligence reports from the former zones show massive infrastructure projects. They're not just repairing damage from the invasion, they're upgrading everything. Upgrading how? Planetary shield systems that can withstand stellar flares. Atmospheric processors that can terraform dead worlds in months instead of centuries. Agricultural systems that increase crop yields by factors of 10 while requiring 90% less water. His pause was longer this time. They're rebuilding entire civilizations from the ground up, and they're making them better than they were before. A soft chime indicated the completion of docking procedures, smoothed her formal robes, and checked her translation protocols one final time. As the Confederation's leading expert on human psychology, she had been chosen to head the first official diplomatic contact. The responsibility felt overwhelming. "Should we be concerned about their intentions?" asked. "That's what we're here to determine." The airlock cycled, and the first official human diplomatic mission stepped onto Confederation Station Prime. Ambassador was smaller than the military humans they had encountered, but she moved with the same confident efficiency. Her skin was darker than the medical personnel had been, and her hair was arranged in intricate patterns that seemed to serve both aesthetic and practical purposes. Behind her came a diverse group of humans, each displaying different physical characteristics, but all radiating the same fundamental competence. "Ambassador," said, her voice carrying warmth that the translation systems struggled to properly convey. "Thank you for welcoming us to your station. We're honored to begin formal relations with the Galactic Confederation." Performed the traditional greeting gesture of her species. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. We are grateful for your assistance with the situation." His facial expression shifted in what had learned to recognize as a smile. "Please call me, and you're quite welcome. Helping neighbors is what civilized beings do." As they moved through the station's corridors toward the main conference chamber, noted how other Confederation personnel reacted to the human delegation. Rather than the fear she had expected, most seemed curious and even excited. Word of human medical treatments and infrastructure improvements had spread throughout Confederate space faster than official reports. "Your people have certainly made an impression," observed. "We tend to do that," replied, "though hopefully for positive reasons." They passed a window overlooking the docking bay where the Endeavor was berthed. Noticed humans already emerging from the ship, carrying cases of equipment and supplies. They moved with purpose but without urgency, like people accustomed to being welcome wherever they went. "Are those additional diplomatic personnel?" "Medical teams, cultural specialists, and technical consultants," explained. "We never travel anywhere without being prepared to help, old habit from when our world was trying to kill us constantly." The main conference chamber had been arranged to accommodate representatives from 37 Confederation member species. Each delegation had its own environmental controls and communication systems. At the chamber's center, a special area had been prepared for the human delegation based on their physiological requirements. As they entered, noticed the immediate impact of human presence. Conversations that had been proceeding in the measured, cautious tones typical of Confederation diplomacy became more animated. Several representatives actually moved closer to the human delegation area, abandoning the formal distance that usually characterized these meetings. Director called the session to order with a harmonic pulse that resonated through the chamber's acoustic systems. "We convene this diplomatic gathering to formally welcome humanity into galactic civilization and to discuss the future of human Confederation relations." Stood, her posture relaxed but attentive. "Thank you, Director. Before we begin formal proceedings, I want to address what I'm sure are pressing questions about human intentions and capabilities." A subtle shift in the chamber's atmosphere indicated heightened attention. "First, regarding our military intervention in the crisis. Human forces remain in position around all former invasion sites not as occupying forces, but as security guarantees while those regions rebuild. We will withdraw as soon as local defenses are restored and enhanced to prevent future incursions." Admiral raised her serpentine form. "Enhanced how specifically?" "We've shared our shield technology and defense platform designs with all affected systems. Additionally, we've established early warning networks that can detect biological weapons from outside normal sensor range." Paused. "We've also provided technical specifications for weapons systems capable of disabling bioships without destroying them." "You're sharing military technology?" The question came from Counselor, his translator struggling with the concept. "All non-classified defensive technologies, yes. Our philosophy is that everyone deserves the ability to protect themselves." Murmurs of amazement rippled through the chamber. Sharing military technology between species was virtually unheard of in Confederation space. "What do you consider classified?" Director asked. "Weapons systems capable of destroying planets, technologies that could be used to create artificial intelligence without proper safeguards, and temporal manipulation devices. We share anything that protects life. We keep secret anything that could end it. Activated a holographic display showing star charts. Red markers indicated former invasion sites, now outlined in green. Which brings us to our current activities in those systems. We're not just rebuilding what was destroyed. We're creating the infrastructure necessary to support advanced civilization without the vulnerability that made the threat possible. The display zoomed in on specific worlds, saw cities that gleamed with impossible beauty, orbital installations that dwarfed anything in Confederation space, and agricultural systems that had transformed barren worlds into garden paradises. The agricultural improvements alone have eliminated food scarcity on 14 worlds, continued. Medical facilities we've established have saved approximately 40 million lives in the past 6 months. Educational programs are sharing human knowledge in engineering, medicine, and scientific research with any species that requests it. And the cost? Asked counselors speaking for the first time in the session. Cost? What do you expect in return for these improvements? Smile returned, but now it carried something couldn't quite identify. Nothing. Silence fell across the chamber. I'm afraid the translation may be malfunctioning, Director said carefully. The translation is correct. We expect nothing in return. Helping others is its own reward. Looked around the chamber, making eye contact with each delegation. This seems to confuse many species we've encountered. Let me explain the human perspective. She gestured to the star charts. We spent our entire evolutionary history fighting for survival against a world that wanted us dead. We learned that cooperation and mutual aid weren't just moral goods, they were survival necessities. You help others because someday you might need help yourself. But you're now the most powerful species in known space, Admiral pointed out. What help could you possibly need? Knowledge, perspective, friendship. His expression became serious. Humans are excellent at survival and technological development, but we're still learning how to live peacefully with others. Each species in the Confederation has knowledge and wisdom we lack, cultural achievements we could never duplicate, art and philosophy that enriches our understanding of existence. She activated new displays showing human colonies. The images revealed cities where multiple species lived and worked together. Humans and aliens cooperating on projects had never imagined possible. We're not trying to create an empire or establish dominance. We're trying to build a community where every species can thrive according to its nature and abilities. And if someone refuses your assistance? The question came from Representative, speaking for one of the more militaristic Confederation members. Then they refuse. We don't force help on anyone. His tone remained pleasant, but something in her posture suggested depths of strength that could be dangerous if provoked. We do, however, continue to offer, and we protect those who accept our assistance from anyone who might threaten them. Found herself speaking without intending to. You're creating voluntary protectorates. We're creating friendships backed by the capability to defend them. There's a difference. Director processed this for several moments. What about species that might view human expansion as threatening? They're welcome to their opinions. They're not welcome to act on them if that action involves harming innocents. Smile never wavered, but the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Humans have one absolute rule in our interactions with other species. You can hate us, fear us, or ignore us. You cannot hurt people under our protection. And who decides who falls under human protection? Anyone who asks for it. The implications hit the chamber like a physical force. Realized what was really offering. Not just alliance or assistance, but absolute security for any species willing to accept human friendship. That's an enormous commitment, Admiral managed. Humans don't make commitments lightly. When we give our word, we keep it regardless of cost. Brought up new displays showing the massive human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. We currently maintain 12,000 active warships, with production facilities capable of doubling that number within one standard year if threatened. 12,000 ships could conquer the galaxy, Counselor observed nervously. Yes, instead, we're using them to make the galaxy safe for everyone. Looked directly at him. Counselor, your species has been dealing with raiders from the system for 3 decades. Would you like us to solve that problem? His translator worked for several seconds before he could respond. You would do that. We would prefer to negotiate a peaceful solution. If that proves impossible, we would ensure the raids stop permanently. The expression was perfectly calm. This is what we mean by protection. Threats to our friends become our problems to solve. Felt a strange mixture of relief and terror. The humans were offering to solve every security problem the Confederation had ever faced, asking nothing in return except friendship. What happens if the Confederation declines your offer of partnership? Director asked. Then you decline. We continue to maintain peaceful relations and keep our assistance offers open. What we won't do is withdraw from systems where we've already established protection agreements. Shrugged. Those people trusted us with their safety. We don't abandon people who trust us. Even if that creates political complications. Politics don't override moral obligations, ever. Studied the human delegation, noting how they all carried themselves with the same fundamental confidence. They weren't uncertain about their place in the galaxy. They had decided what they were going to do and were simply informing everyone else. You're not really asking for our permission, are you? She said quietly. Turned to her with what might have been approval. Ambassador, you understand humans better than most. We're not asking permission to exist or to help those in need. We're offering partnership because we believe cooperation produces better outcomes than unilateral action. But you'll proceed regardless of our decision. We'll proceed in ways that cause the least disruption to existing political structures while still fulfilling our obligations to those we've promised to protect. Activated one final display. This is what human space looked like 6 months ago. The star chart showed the Sol system in complete isolation. And this is what it looks like now. The new chart revealed human installations throughout the galaxy. Hundreds of systems, thousands of worlds, all connected by networks of trade, communication, and mutual defense. We're not going back into quarantine. We're not abandoning our friends. We're not withdrawing our protection from people who need it. His voice carried absolute finality. The question isn't whether humans will be part of galactic civilization. The question is whether we'll be part of it as partners or as something else. The chamber fell silent as the implications registered. Humanity had already established itself as the dominant force in the galaxy. They were offering to use that dominance benevolently, but they weren't offering to relinquish it. Director's form pulsed with the rapid light patterns that indicated intense processing. We need time to discuss this among our member governments. Of course, take all the time you need. Smile returned to its earlier warmth. While you're discussing, we'll continue our current activities, medical assistance, infrastructure development, and security provision for anyone who requests it. As the session concluded, realized they had just witnessed the end of the old galactic order. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy through force. They had made themselves indispensable to it through competence and genuine desire to help. Whether that was better or worse than conquest remained to be seen. But as she watched, chatting easily with representatives from species who had been mortal enemies for centuries, all of them somehow unified in their curiosity about human perspectives, began to suspect it might be the best thing that had ever happened to galactic civilization. The age of human protection was no longer beginning. It had already begun. The rest of the galaxy was just catching up to that reality.